All right, and welcome to Fleeting Thoughts, Episode 4. Channing and Joe going at it again. Word up. How's it going, Channing? We have an episode. This is going to be an interesting one because it's late at night.
I know. We might end up babbling on for incoherently a little bit.
Yeah, might be
to keep ourselves in check. I'm not too tired, actually. I feel pretty good.
Yeah, you seem enthused. You seem enthusiastic about the situation.
That's what happens when you eat too much salad, Joe. You get a little weird speech
that what
impediments.
That and hairy palms, I have a problem happening here. So right on, and welcome to the podcast. So yeah, it's late evening, and we're gonna record this podcast. What words are we brought to us ourselves? What am I saying here?
What words is this episode brought to you by?
Brought to me by
Joe, it would be Reconnoiter, which was a request by a listener, and then Fastidious.
All right. So yeah, Reconnoiter, my buddy Justin, he gave me a suggestion. I think that's great. Suggestions make things easier for us, less thinking involved. And so we looked up Reconnoiter. What is the definition of Reconnoiter?
Well, Joe, that would be to inspect, observe, or survey in order to gain information for military purposes.
Wow. What's the second definition? To examine or survey a region, area for engineering, geological, or other purposes. So it doesn't have to be for military purposes, but that's probably what people mostly use it for. Reconnoiter, it's spelled Reconnoiter.
ER.
What did I just say?
You just said R.
You know what's funny? You know what's funny is that while I was doing that, literally I got to the T, and my eyes just sort of went away from the words. Like, it literally just sort of, fuck it, you know it. Just say continue. Okay, I'm going to repeat that for people who aren't listening.
For the sake of accuracy.
Yeah, for the sake of accuracy. Reconnoiter. I'd be the worst at a spelling bee. I'd just be like, what would you say?
The word's right in front of you, man. What's up?
Yeah, the word's right in front of you. The words aren't in front of them in spelling bees.
No, but I mean in this case it
was
this
right
is
in front
even
worse. Yeah, obviously. Yeah, it reminds me, the end part reminds me of the word goiter, which I think is like loose skin around your neck. I could be wrong about that. I'm just guessing. I'll have to look it up, and I don't want to right now. But I have a pretty sweet goiter going on right now. How much reconnoitering have you done lately, Channing?
I have not observed or surveyed enemies of any kind lately.
I don't know. Shadow of Mordor, you're doing a lot of reconnoitering.
That's true.
That's
and you're
not
just
real.
Doing a lot of
fastidious work.
Yes. God damn, I had a lot of fastidious or dealings in that game.
Yeah,
but
sounds like a pain.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. Fucking level 25 runes. Anybody playing that game knows what I'm talking about. So
yeah. Nobody.
Everyone's like, what?
Fucking runes.
Anyway, I'd never heard of the word reconnoiter before you brought it up, and like I said before, it honestly sounds like a mutated, vicious hemorrhoid. Like you started with hemorrhoids, and then
vicious.
Just you didn't mess with them at all. You just let them be, and then eventually it evolved into a reconnoiter. That's just what it's. I don't know why that's what comes to mind when I heard that word.
You probably should see a doctor about that.
I might have
a
reconnoiter going on right now. I think that's cool. You can see the recon bit, which makes sense.
Recon, and then it's essentially just another word. It's essentially the present tense of reconnaissance, right? Or like the verb of reconnaissance. Reconnaissance is the thing you get when you reconnoiter.
Yeah.
Right? You get reconnaissance, which is the information that you're trying to attain. Or
it looks
people
like,
just use reconnaissance.
Yeah, it
instead.
says reconnaissance is what you would use as the verb if you didn't have an object. So I feel like if you're referring to a specific object, you would say you did a reconnoiter on their weapons. Whereas it looks like reconnaissance is just something you would say without using an object with it. Kind of like an adverb thing that we were talking about last time.
Whoa.
I know.
That blew
your mind.
Wow. Specific usage rules. All right. Next word is fastidious. I used this word in my day-to-day life the other day, and I realized that it was kind of a funky big word, and it made me feel proud, so I thought we could define it. What's the definition for that one?
It's excessively particular, critical, or demanding, hard to please, such as a fastidious eater, or requiring or characterized by excessive care or delicacy, as in a painstaking process.
Sweet.
Fastidious.
Whoop-de-doo. No, yeah, that's it's a good word. I like it describes kind of neurotic behavior, like, ooh, I got to make sure everything is in place and perfect, and it can definitely be a negative thing, I think, to be too fastidious about things. So those are the 2 words today. That was quick and efficient, by the way.
I think it's because we discussed, we definitely discussed Reconnoiter quite a bit already.
Yeah.
So I feel like when you go into it knowing what you want to say and already have a good idea, it goes quicker. You're not just swimming
Winging
around, dilly-and-dallying and winging it.
Fiddling and swagging, swingily-boobing. Sweet. So let's get into the meat of our discussion. And why don't we talk about John Wick real quick since we've got time?
Oh, yeah.
We just went to see John Wick the other day, and it was a lot of fun. What did you think about the movie?
When I always go to see an action movie, I go in with the mindset of not expecting much as far as plot or coherent thought processes from the characters. I just want to see brutal action sequences. And in that regard, that the film delivered. It has some of the best action sequences, especially with firearms, that I've seen in a long time. Honestly, probably since The Raid 2. Like, The Raid 2 is is my go-to comparison for all action films now, because that is like the epitome of action films, in my opinion. That movie is just insanely brutal, and so every time I watch an action movie, I compare it to that. And this was the first one, and since I probably have watched The Raid 2, that I was like, damn, that was impressive. Like, it's very fast-paced, it's brutal, the cinematography for the action sequences is spot on. The plot's a little shaky. Some of the decisions that they make throughout the film are kind of dumb. And I also enjoyed the little culture that they kind of show off that these assassins have. They're almost like their own little subculture. They have like this special hotel that they all stay in. They kind of have this mutual respect between each other. Like they know not to step on each other's toes too much. So it was interesting. I wouldn't mind seeing like another one almost that would explain some of that more. Like you kind of just get tossed into it, and you see little bits of it. But it's like I want to know, I guess, more of the history of like all these hitmen and assassins.
That'd be really easy. Just a prequel, because they talk about his prior, how he got out of the business was the most amazing, impossible thing ever. All they'd have to do, I bet they already thought of that. I mean, of course they thought about it, but I bet they're already doing it. If this is popular, I bet that they'll put money into either a prequel or a sequel to it. Just because Keanu Reeves, I was just listening to Doug Loves Movies on the way over here, and they were talking about John Wick, and he was saying that the director of John Wick was his body double in The Matrix, and at that time he wasn't a director, and now he's a director, and so they kind of made this movie together as friends. So I'd be very surprised if they didn't make another one if this one makes enough money.
Yeah, well, the characters talk about him being like this boogeyman, and it would be cool to go back and see him as this visceral badass that everybody's just fucking scared of. Yeah, because it was cool to see how scared of him they were, with just word spreading around that he was coming back, and then when that mob boss's son messes with him, he's like, "What? Oh," like everybody's response is "oh" when they realize who he fucked with. Yeah. It would just be cool to get some context to that, but at the same time, I can see them just not doing it. I mean, it's like the Star Wars movies. You saw the original trilogy; they give you these tidbits of the past story, and then everybody kind of filled it in with their own imagination. And then when they actually went back and did the prequel trilogy, you're like, ugh. I would have rather just left it in my imagination.
Yeah, I don't know if the Star Wars foul up was because of the story. I think it was because of the excessive CGI and the terrible acting on the part of the main actor or whatever in that. And it was disjointed from the original tone and story. But anyway, yeah, John Wick was good. It was fun. I think I need to watch it again because I think it was so fast-paced that my mind and my eyes were darting around so much that I think I'd get a lot more out of it in the second go-round because I wouldn't be trying to figure out the plot, like figure out what's going to happen next, and I'd be able to pick out all the really subtle choreographed moves because I think that's what it is. I think it's less about Keanu Reeves, even though he pulls it off wonderfully. He's very good in it. He doesn't have to say very much, which is wonderful for him.
He's best when he's not really saying a lot.
Yeah. Hey, dude, fuck, man. I gotta kill all these guys. Fuck. That's a terrible impression, but you get what I'm saying. I think it's really just a testament to the choreography. It's just the stuntmen and actors. You know, everyone who pulled it off because it looks very good. It's very quick and efficient martial arts with guns. Kind of reminds me of Equilibrium or any of those movies that have guns as martial arts weapons, that they're not just for pointing and shooting, they're also for integrating into close combat and stuff.
Yeah, they call it gun fu. It's actually a term that they use
really
in Hollywood. Yeah, it's to like describe that type of fighting. So.
No, it makes sense. This is some damn good gung fu.
It reminded me of
gun fu
of those like John Woo films from like the late 90s, early 2000s. It was just like that fast-paced, high-octane action movie, and then they kind of faded away. Like, I mean, there's been action films since then, but not the same.
What's a John Woo movie? I mean, I know
he did like
about.
Face Off and Jesus, he's done so many, and I can't remember. I don't remember his movies. I don't know what Face Off's the one I remember. But
he had a video game, John Woo's.
That Stranglehold,
yeah,
with Chow Yun Fat, I think was the guy in that.
Did he do the one with Jet Li?
Oh, I don't think so. Maybe.
That's a really cool movie.
Yeah, that's a cool
Jet
movie.
Li does a fucking good job with Fearless. Have you ever seen Fearless?
Yeah, Fearless is good. I liked my favorite Jet Li movie was Unleashed. I don't know if
that
you watched
movie. That's the one I'm
Bob
thinking
Hoskins,
of too.
where he's like a trained dog. Essentially,
I think it's so good because it's not. It has such a good story and such good acting and really good directing and cinematography. But did we already mention how good the cinematography was in Fury?
Yeah, I think you talked about that last
we did.
Time when
we
were
must have because
it.
I just am just remembering how good the cinematography was in that. There's another movie I was just thinking about that has amazing cinematography. Oh, it's Lone Survivor. The cinematography in that is better than I would put it up there with the best cinematography as far as encapsulating the tone of what's happening in the scene and whatnot and in the movie. So
I finally got around to watching the other day Snowpiercer, which is probably the most unique film that I've seen in years. Almost.
It's super interesting. Very different, a little bit hard to predict. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, oh shit, this is going down now, and it's kind of straightforward.
Yeah,
I kind of like that. Literally and figure, like the movie is about a train going forward. And
in a circle.
Yeah, in a humongous circle, which I didn't get. That's a huge flaw, other than the fact that they built it for a purpose prior to what's currently going on. But if you really just needed a train to survive on, you would only need it to go in whatever. You don't need it to go around the world and be all dangerous. You would just have to go in a circle, like in America. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to do anything other than like not be outdoors.
I need to watch it again because I feel like they kind of filled in like historical stuff like here and there, but sometimes it was really subtle, and I kind of would miss it. Yeah. Because I know that they used the train circling to gauge time because it took exactly 1 year for that train to travel around the world on its track, which I don't know if that really played a whole lot.
You could easily figure that out by miles.
Yeah.
And rate of speed. I mean, they're fucking scientists who built the most amazing, technologically advanced anything ever. But I think they built it prior to the apocalypse because it was supposed to be commercial, and then
I can't remember.
Whatever
they talked about the reason why he built it,
and then all of
I
a
can't
sudden
remember what
they
exactly
need
it was. Yeah,
but he knew what was happening. The main guy knew that it was going to end up that way, and so he kind of was planning on using it.
Yeah, it was literally like an ark, like Noah's Ark. It was like a modern Noah's Ark
for sure, minus any animals.
Well, they had the fish in that aquarium tunnel, which
fish
is cool.
and chickens, but ultimately, the Earth would have to be repopulated mostly by polar bears and other, ice things. How do the would the polar bears be alive if everything was negative like 400 degrees, and then all of a sudden because it slowly became better again?
I think that the idea was that it was a lie. Like maybe it was that way at first, and then they just were all living this lie. They were all brainwashed and indoctrinated from birth, essentially, to believe these things.
But it was only 18 years or something that the whole thing is that the bomb happened.
Yeah,
so most of the people that were in the movie had known both lives. So it was a little confusing on all the logic.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't like a perfect movie. It had little weird things that bothered me.
Really cool though.
The ending, I think, is what kind of lost me a little bit. I enjoyed the movie all the way up until like the very last, probably like 5 minutes. I'm just like, wait, why would you end it that way? That is not good for anybody. You just
twists on you.
Fucked everyone. Like, I don't want to say how it ends. That way, if anybody listening wants to watch it, they don't.
Whatever.
Spoiled, but
it's a lot of people aren't going to watch that movie. It's a weird offshoot independent film, but it's good. It's fun. I just liked how different it was. Really.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well, let's get into. Let's cut open. Let's find the biggest dog we can find, cut it open, and learn about its insides. Metaphorically speaking.
Oh, metaphorically.
And so the dog represents dogs, and cutting it open represents gaining information. I think if you have to explain the metaphor, it's not a good metaphor. That could be a problem. Anyway.
Yeah, just a little bit.
So let's talk about dogs. I hope this is somewhat interesting to people who don't own dogs, but dogs are a very integral part of human society for thousands of years, and have been used for all different reasons, and they're different breeds, and the way that has been controlled and manipulated by people is a huge study in genetics. The history of dog breeding is very interesting. So let's get into it. What do you want to talk about first?
Well, I mean, I guess we could dive into a little bit of brief history. I did some studying on it earlier. I think you did some reading.
Do it.
I mean, there's a ton of science behind it and fancy phrases, and I was just like, I'll skip all that. Like, I don't want to. I don't want to turn into a lecture that somebody's going to fall asleep listening to. So I just pulled like a few little bullet points that I thought were interesting. Which, to start off, dogs are actually the first domesticated animal in history, actually, ever, which I thought was interesting.
Before the cattle, before chickens, before anything else. I
think fully domesticated as in like they were used to help. Like they're literally integrated in for working, hunting, as a food source.
Right.
Like a lot. I mean, even in today's culture, people fucking eat them. So.
Right. And it makes more sense because a dog can travel with you, and people didn't integrate into farming until later. So it makes sense that dogs would be the first kind of animal that we used more exclusively than others. I think horses probably
would be
probably
up there
in that, because that was also for you could travel with them. So you can't travel with your farm, and you can't travel with your big I guess they move around a little bit with sheep, but yeah, anyway, sorry.
Oh no, it's fine. Interject away. But actually the history for them is still up for debate quite a bit as far as how they were domesticated and when they were first originally domesticated. They actually do all the science through mitochondrial DNA testing through burial sites that they find. And so basically they spawn there. They've evolved and descended from wolves, essentially. And using the DNA research, they guess that split started to happen about 100,000 years ago. And as far as domestication goes, the earliest evidence they found dates back about 30,000 years in burial sites in like the Middle East and stuff. They would find people buried with animals, and so I feel like they're kind of guessing like, oh, since the dogs and the people were buried together, they were probably domesticated in some capacity. But they actually call those dogs European Paleolithic dogs because they were still partially wolves. They just started to take on the characteristics of modern day breeds. But even like the oldest modern breeds are only about 500 years old. Because people were talking about how as far as like the little dogs like Chihuahuas and stuff must have been bred down into that. But according to their evidence, like this kind of happened naturally. People might have dabbled in it and affected it in some ways, but they were saying that like a lot of other subspecies of animals, they just have different types and then have existed, because they were given examples of like in China they found graves from 20,000-30,000 years ago that had just very small dog bone structures, just like you would find in today's dogs. So just little things like that. They were talking about how mostly dog history is just intertwined with human history, and that how we've learned to work together, and then we use them as essentially a tool to help us accomplish things. So yeah, I mean, it's starting back at least like 30,000 years, if not later. I mean, that's just the earliest any signs that they've found. They said that they found some a little bit older, but it looked more to be like they were eaten. They weren't, because it wasn't like whole bone structures, it was just pieces. So I mean, they probably started as like a food source for humans, and then eventually it just kind of changed and evolved, and maybe they realized that, hey, this thing can learn from me and I can kind of bond with it and then use it to maybe hunt other animals and stuff. So it's interesting. I mean, a lot of it, I guess, like a lot of sciences that take place so far back, it's partially just theory along with whatever evidence you can find, and you just have to kind of go from there.
Sure.
But it's interesting.
What
do you know of the history?
I did some reading on it later this evening, or earlier this evening. Later in the future, I will read and know these things. It seemed like for the most part, they've got a ton of interesting evidence. Like, they've done a ton of research. Obviously, people care a lot about dogs, and we've had a lot of time to document things, and there's a lot of information about it. I think I read something similar about the whole around 30,000 years ago was when they had some pretty clear evidence that the animals were used for work of some sort. I think companionship and for looks came much later, probably in Europe, probably mostly, and I think China too, because I know they have some kind of show dog stuff there too. And what I read was they've definitely. It's a little bit unclear as far as different dog groups being related to previous ancestors. So they don't have an exact look at or exact knowledge of like how certain, because there are lots of different dog types in the world. They're all the same, technically in the same species or family or whatever. And I think they're on the same family of canids, and then you have species like the current domesticated dogs, and then you have wolves, which I think are in the same. Are they in the same species, or are they just?
I think that they are.
Technically, they
They're
are,
just kind of
because they can breed with each other, and their offspring has viable offspring. They have fertile offspring, so I think that's one of the main markers of a specific species. And that the ones that we have, they used to think that they might be from multiple types of dogs. Like maybe some types of dogs came from wolves, some types of dogs came from like African wild dogs and jackals and things. But we found out through genetics that it's pretty much just wolves. Like obviously, I don't think domesticating wild 150-pound beast is the easiest thing to accomplish. So obviously it's going to only happen in a few different places throughout the world. And they said it did happen in multiple civilizations domesticated wolves in different ways to create different outcomes and stuff. It's interesting. It'd be nice to know exactly what's going on, but I guess we don't really need to. I liked looking into how they were domesticated, how you get from wild animal that is on the outskirts of your your huts and your little village, and how you get them into being a normal part of your daily life, and they rely on you and you rely on them. I think that's an interesting circumstance. Or
did they give like an example of how they might have done that?
Yes.
Like, I would assume maybe luring it in with like food and maybe slowly building that bond. And virgins. All right. Sacrifice.
They lure them in with little doggy virgins. No, they actually did an experiment that I read on, that I've read before and I read again tonight, and it's a really awesome experiment that they did in like Russia or something with these foxes. And so what they did is they there were these wild foxes that were just wild forever, and they found them. And what they did is they essentially lured them in via food. And so what they would do is over 40 generations, they would selectively breed only for friendliness toward people. So if the dog, if the fox, I mean, would, if it would kind of be afraid and run away, they wouldn't breed it, right? It was only the ones that came up to humans that were predisposed, had that genetic marker for not being afraid as much, or bonding a little bit quicker and easier, not being as afraid as quick, being less skittish toward getting the food from their hand or whatever. And then they did that over 40 generations. So eventually they pretty much just had these domesticated dog foxes. And so they wouldn't leave. It took 40 years or 50 years with 40 generations of these dogs. Oh, wow. And so what they found was that obviously after that much time, the dogs were obviously more friendly toward people, right? They essentially kind of relied on people at that point, or at least wanted to be around people. But they also found that selected traits that they didn't select for, that they didn't try to induce or try to contain or recreate or whatever, started to come out in the later generations of the domesticated ones, the ones that they decided to selectively breed. And some of the traits were like floppy ears. They would have a black and white coat, which was different than the non-domesticated ones. They would have shorter... they would come to sexual maturity in a shorter amount of time. There were little physical markers that were caused indirectly by the selective breeding, which is interesting because those are a lot of the traits that we like and they had waggy tails too, which are all things that we want in domesticated dogs that have been domesticated for years, or bred for years. So I thought that was interesting, like little floppy ears. Why would their ears go floppy? I think it was probably due to inbreeding, right? So their ears, naturally were erect, and then over inbreeding, certain genetic mutations happened, or the combination of the inbreeding probably led to some weird physical effects.
I wonder if with the floppy ears, I feel like if dogs would have the erect ears, probably they're more alert.
Wild. Sure.
And so if you're raising animals in a culture where they don't need to be so fastidious,
of the environment.
They have a more lax environment because people feed them things. And so they don't have to hunt as much. They don't have to be as alert.
Sure.
And so it's like you just evolve with your environment. And
maybe that
change.
gene just didn't need to express itself because they didn't need to listen as hard. So that, I think, is really, really interesting because essentially they recreated what we did a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And who knows how big wolves were back then. There could have been small ones. They also talked about how one of the ways that they might have domesticated them was by obtaining orphaned wolves that just were left behind for some reason, or they got too close to humans, and so they just left them behind. And so maybe they just took them in, as wolves, and then they just grew up with people, and then that helped
I feel like if you
domesticate
get them, when they're babies and they're raised around you, and that's all they know.
Just like a lot of animals.
I mean, they'll always have those primal tendencies, I guess. But they would be more friendly towards people if they were raised around them, instead of trying to obviously take in an adult wolf that's been in the wild the whole time. It would not go over very well.
And wonder why it's not being particularly friendly toward you. What's wrong, Fido?
My fucking name's Fido.
Face.
That's my first problem.
Which is interesting because wolves are such a problem, right? Because in certain places throughout history, wolves have just they live in packs and they fucking kill things, and they kill all your cattle and your chickens, and they kill all your animals if they're in big packs. And people have always had problems with wolves, but it makes sense because when we were domesticating wolves, we didn't have farms. We would just, we would get a wolf, we would domesticate it, it would become our worker, and then we would move around, in our migration pattern, and that would be fine. But then all of a sudden, we start setting up farms, and there's just this easy target for like packs of wolves, out in the
animals
woods.
behind a fence, so they're completely defenseless for the most part.
Yeah,
so
they're defenseless.
Ha! I see what you did there.
I don't get it. I don't get my own joke.
Sorta. Speaking of wolves, you should watch The Gray if you
I
haven't.
have.
That's a
I
fucking
have
great
seen
movie.
It. I
and
saw that
wolves
with
are
my dad
terrifying.
when it came out. I didn't like the movie.
Oh, really?
For two reasons. One, I didn't find the wolves realistic. I found them to be way too like personified. Like they made them out to seem like they really just wanted to eat these people really bad. And I don't think wolves give a shit. They would just go find the easiest target, and these guys were not easy targets.
Yeah.
Whatever, maybe I'm wrong. Also, the amount of wolves in that pack was ridiculous. I know that wolves get really big, and I just don't have experience, so maybe was like, no fucking way. But maybe it's realistic. And then they also use CG wolves.
Yeah.
Through most of it. I hate that shit.
I wish that they wouldn't have. I wish that they would have had.
I'd rather they
trained.
just had less wolves and used some trained, half wolf dogs, and I would have liked it a lot better. And then, it's super depressing, super brutal. It was well done movie, very engaging, but it just didn't it wasn't fun. It didn't make me want to like go out in the woods ever again. But, maybe more realistic than I thought, but that's a brutal fucking movie.
It is.
The Gray. I think that's about my family. No, nah. It's
Family, a pack of CG wolves that eat people.
Yeah. No, because my last name's Gray.
Oh, I know. I get what you get at.
Yeah.
It's okay.
But yeah, for show.
Well, what about what are your personal experiences with dogs? I know you've had at least a dog.
Sure.
At one point.
Yeah, I actually grew up with dogs. I grew up with quite a few dogs, actually. We had a golden lab, which had puppies with a black lab. And the golden lab was named Butterscotch, and because it was golden. Gold. And my brother actually found it in the woods when he was hanging out, because we used to live out in the middle of nowhere on a mountain, and he literally just found this dog in a bush in the woods. Crazy shit. I'm not even making that up.
No, that must have just been
saying it out loud now, because it's been years since I've talked about it. That it sounds weird, but he did. I think this is the right story. He'd probably tell better than me. But he found this dog in the woods, and then we kept it, and it grew up with us. And then
was it like a little baby that he
yeah,
found?
it was literally
like
newborn with its eyes closed. Like its mom probably was went into the woods to have it, and it got left behind or. Some shit, man. This is crazy. I don't know how that
he was found.
Right, and we lived there, and so we kept it, and then it had puppies with a black lab, and we had a ton of puppies, and they all got parvo. Do you know what parvo is? You know what parvo is. You have to, because you have to be aware of that to have a dog. And
nasty shit. That's what it is.
So it killed all of its puppies.
Oh man, that's
and actually one time it bred with a Shar-Pei. I think on accident, like some neighbor dog. And it had all these beautiful Shar-Pei puppy dogs, and they all died. And obviously very sad, because it has like 8 puppies or something, and they live for like months, and then all of a sudden they just start like not eating and falling apart.
Was it the same thing? It was a parvo?
It was parvo again. And what we didn't know is that parvo stays on your property. It stays in the ground. It's like in the grass. I don't know what it is. Is it a virus or a bacteria or something?
I think
something
so.
Like that.
Yeah.
And so they all died. I think that was 2 litters, and then after that we just like got them fixed and no more puppies. Because adults, yeah, it was horrible, and we had to bury them. We literally at that property had a pet cemetery because we had horses and we had a sheep and we had lots of dogs and tons of cats, and I mean we had all the animals, and so we had a pet cemetery. It was like corded off, and it had little tombstones and shit. That's pretty weird. Maybe we weren't the right people for these animals. But anyway, so yeah, that was my first experience. And then I got I was like, I want a dog, right? I was a kid. I think Butterscotch had died. It like got old and whatnot. And then I was a little bit older and I wanted to have a dog. So we went to the pound and we got an adult Shar Pei. Now, if you don't know, Shar Peis were originally guard and fighting dogs for the Chinese royalty for it's the left one there. For Chinese military, essentially. So it would they would use them as attack dogs. Yep, that's it. You got it. Oh. Jennings trying to turn on the computer. It'll go. It'll go.
I didn't think it
Just
turned
let
off.
it go.
I thought I just went like standby. I was going to
Let
look
it
up Parvis, so I had a
go.
little bit more. We had more context
Let
on
it
it.
go. Anyway, so we got a Shar Pei from the pound, and if we should have thought twice about it because Shar Peis are very aggressive dogs when they're not well trained, and so it was at the pound, so it must not have been well trained. Blah blah blah. So we got this dog. It peed everywhere. It crapped everywhere. It was horribly trained. Like I literally every day before school would have to clean up shit and piss from the kitchen floor because this dog was never housebroken. And then it got out once and tore the throat out of our sheep.
Oh, Jesus.
Or my aunt's sheep, because my aunt had sheep at our place. And so I remember coming home, and the sheep was dying. It wasn't dead yet, and our neighbor shot the sheep in the head with, like, 10 22 bullets.
He's such a good boy.
What is this?
He's a little overweight.
Fat cat.
Fucking videos.
Video you're just pulling up here randomly? You gotta warn me first. Anyway, he shot the sheep in the head, which I just think is an interesting thing that you could shoot a sheep in the head 10 times, but sheep are fucking retarded, so I think he ended up having to slit its throat.
Like a fucking chicken, kind of.
Yeah, no, they're retarded.
Yeah.
Like, this sheep just, like, it was dying, it got shot in the head 10 times in the brain with a gun, and it still didn't matter. Like, it still was like, meh, or whatever, with gargling sounds from its throat. Anyway, that's brutal and gruesome. And so that's my early childhood with dogs.
You have a lot of death.
Yeah,
and,
death, but ultimately
violence.
I love dogs. They were great. You know, the ones that lived were wonderful, except for the Shar Pei. And then, I remember. Never mind. I don't want to tell that story. It's about a dog. We had neighbors who had dogs, and they were horrible, like a pack of fucking like Rottweilers and shit. And they would just terrorize the neighborhood when they would get out. And they actually, one of my dogs ended up over at their property. It was a puppy. Oh, this beautiful, like, white golden lab puppy, like maybe 2 months old, ends up over there, and we just hear a ton of, like, skirmishing noises, and then it ends up hobbling back to our property. And I remember it was sitting on the porch, just bloodied, just like mangled, and I remember we got it like 55 stitches, ended up dying anyway. Like, that was literally the first time I saw what it was to see another mammal, another animal that, like, you know, was close enough, like, in pain, dying. It was like makes you want to puke and cry, and it was just like horrible to see. It was this beautiful little puppy. So anyway, yeah, I guess I have some pretty horrible experiences with dogs early on. But then about 4 or 5 years ago, I was dating a girl, and a few months in, we decided to get a dog, and we got a Westie Schnauzer mix, and we named it Wowzer, which seemed to fit perfectly because Westies, you know, you're gonna get it. It's pretty clever. So that's just a little dog. It's they call them. It's essentially a terrier style dog, which are dogs that were originally bred to chase small rodents into small areas, like through bushes, under rocks, all stuff like that. So it's essentially a rodent chasing dog.
Like, if you didn't want a cat but wanted a dog, you'd get that.
Well, I think it was for more like farms with, you know, where you would have cats and dogs, and these were like, dogs are a lot easier to tell what to do. So I think that was for like more hunting than just killing. Maybe, I don't know, but dachshunds were originally bred to be small and thin to get under and into places that you
like little rodent tunnels.
Yeah,
and stuff,
rodent
right?
tunnels,
Yeah.
exactly, or snake tunnels or something. And what they, especially terriers like Westies and Cairns and other small dogs like that, they actually have strong tails, and they're designed like bred so that you can grab their tail and pull them out of holes,
Yeah,
which
I
is
remember
really
reading about
cool. And I don't know if it's cool, but it's interesting that they were that specifically they, because probably horrible humans were taking these tiny dogs and ripping their tails off, and so the ones that didn't have their tails ripped off, they bred. You know what I'm saying? That's
Yeah.
really how you
Yeah,
figure
no,
that out.
that's
It's fucking
totally true.
horrible. So anyway, we had this dog. It's a beautiful dog. We ended up breaking up like 3 years after getting the dog, and I trained it, and I loved it, and I kept it with me, around me, however things are. And then we broke up. And so I realized that you're not supposed to have dogs with people that you might break up with, because it's fucking horrifying.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like a tenth of what it's like to have a kid, I think, is roughly the proportion of it. And so for the first year, every week I would go visit the dog, and I would watch it for the day, or I'd watch it for 2 days, and I would take it to the dog park. And then slowly I just, I think I met another girl, and I just... I think I was people use dogs for affection and for companionship, and I found a girlfriend, so we ended up spending time together, and I didn't take the time out of my day to go see the dog, and then it just went lower and lower until it just became where I just didn't really want to go deal with it, and I didn't want to see my ex-girlfriend all the time and have to plan things, and it just became inconvenient to go see this dog, and it stopped... it still knew me, but it wasn't attached to me like at all compared to what it used to be. Where it didn't follow me as much when we would go places. Like it would kind of just roam off by itself a lot more. And then when we would be in the house, it would just be by the door, scratching at the door all the time, because I wasn't, I was just sitting watching shows or whatever, because I was just hanging out with it, and it would just want to leave, because it wanted to go back home. It wasn't at home anymore. So I don't know. I don't think the dog really cares. I think it's sad that I don't hang out with it. But I can get another dog, and I want to get a dog just myself, have a dog. I will definitely get a dog at some point when I have a better place and more time to train it and stuff. But so that's my history with dogs. You have a dog. What?
I do.
Tell us all about your dog.
Oh, my dog. Well, my history with dogs is a little bit different than yours. I mean, my family just always had various dogs growing up, but my family had just a terrible habit of moving around all the time, and so we would get dogs, then we would move, and we couldn't take the dogs with us, or they wouldn't let us have the dog. And so dogs were always coming and going when I was growing up. All of my animals were, and so I never developed any kind of emotional attachment to them. I remember it early on because I was like, well, this thing's going to be around for like 6 months probably, and then something's going to happen. So I just never had any emotional attachment to any of my animals growing up. And then I just kind of became more of a cat person. Like I got a cat. My mom got me my own little kitten when I was like 11 or 10, and then it got hit by a car a year later, and that was devastating for me. And then I just never had another animal until I was in middle school. I don't know. I assume all kids just go through this phase where you just want to have a fucking dog. Like I really want this. I want a puppy. And so I remember going through that phase, and then my mom found us a little black lab puppy, and I quickly realized how totally underprepared I was for raising a dog. That thing was like mildly retarded. It shit and pissed all over the place all the time. I was a younger kid, and I didn't realize that I needed to, take it out like every hour or two when they're little. They otherwise they'll just go wherever. I just didn't know what I was doing at all, and I just remember my parents were like, "No, it's your dog. Like you raise it, you clean it up." Like I didn't get hit tips or anything. And I mean, I finally, he literally wasn't potty trained until he was like 6 or 7 months old. It was a nightmare. It got to the point where I just had to leave him outside, just put him on a chain outside while I was gone all day, because my mom was sick of dealing with him.
Even though she wasn't really dealing with him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she just didn't want him in the house because he would just pee and poo everywhere.
Yeah.
And then I finally got him trained. He finally grew up enough where he wasn't just like this crazy little puppy anymore, and he would start to listen. And then we ended up, my parents went through a separation, and then we ended up staying with my grandparents. Well, my grandparents were allergic to dogs. So then guess who got to get rid of his dog that he finally started to train? Me. And so after that, I just was like, I'm done with dogs and animals. Like, I'm sick of getting them, putting energy into them, and then them leaving me, or I have to get rid of them. So I had nothing to do with dogs after that until 3 years ago, when my wife has always been a huge dog person, loved dogs, particularly small dogs like Pomeranians. Her whole family has had Pomeranians for years. I hate small dogs. Nothing against them. If I want a small dog, I'll just have a cat. I don't like. If I want a dog, I want like a medium size at least dog. And so she pestered me to get a dog for a long time. And one of her mom's friends actually breeds German Shepherds. And I've always loved German Shepherds. They're beautiful dogs. They're just incredible. And they've always been like one of my favorite breeds of dog. And we finally were living in a place where we had a yard, and she was finishing school and I just was working one job. And so it was like we had enough free time to like take care of a dog. Before I was working multiple jobs. She was going to school. We just were never home. It would have been a total waste of time for everybody. And it would have been miserable for the dog. And anyway, so her mom's friend was breeding dogs, and she just had a litter of puppies. And since we knew her, she was going to sell it to us for half price. And so we were just like, she would sell the females for $500 at least. And so she was going to sell it to us for $250. And I was just like, damn, like this is my favorite breed of dog. We're going to get it for half off. It kind of like the stars aligned, I guess, for it to happen. And so we ended up doing it. And it's been awesome. Sometimes, most of the time it's awesome. Oh man, sometimes it's a total handful nightmare. My first experience with her actually is, I remember we went to her friend, the lady who bred the dog. We went to her house, and as soon as we pulled up, she let the dogs out. It was Dizzy, the German Shepherd. It was her, and one of her brothers was still there. I remember them both just like trouncing out, and they were huge already. They were only 8 weeks old, but like they were monsters already. Like they were just so big. And I remember them just being terrified of us when we walked up. They like ran right back into the house, and then we went inside and we were like chatting with them, and they gave us like all the paperwork for her because she was all updated on her shops. They got her dewormed, all that good stuff. And then I remember while we were standing there talking, Dizzy actually came over and fell asleep on my feet. Like she just at one point laid across my feet while I was standing there, just passed out. And that was just like my first little bonding moment with her, was just her passed out on my feet. And then she cried the whole way home. I had to hold her as we drove home, and she just cried and whined, and I remember being afraid that she was going to pee on me the whole time. But yeah, and even, we did a lot of research on German Shepherds. They're very high energy dogs. They were bred obviously in Germany to be guard dogs and work dogs for herding and protection. Obviously, like police use them. Yep. Shepherds. And so, I did a lot of research, and I was like, damn, this is a high-energy dog. I need to be ready to, like, deal with this, which luckily I was already running, and so I was like, well, I'll have a good running companion now, and she learned really fast. Like, it took us maybe just a week or two to get her house broken. She took no time at all to learn. She had accidents, obviously, because she was small and can't hold it forever, but I remember one morning, she woke me up at like 6 a.m, and I refused to carry her up and down the stairs. I was like, no, you need to get up and down the stairs yourself. Like, you got to get strong. And I just didn't want her to get in the habit of me carrying her around and then her being a baby about it. And I remember her crying the whole way down the stairs because I was like just a few steps ahead of her, and she would get upset if I got too far ahead. And then we made it down the stairs and halfway across the living room, and then she just couldn't hold it anymore and just let loose right in the middle of the living room. Anyway, that's another fun story. But she knows a lot. She is awesome. We run every day for a couple miles, then we usually take her for a walk or two. We try to take her over to, we have like a little field across from where we live. We try to take her out there like once or twice a week so she can play fetch. The only trouble we've ever had with her really is that she takes a long time to warm up to strangers, as you have personal experience with. Like, she just comes on very strong, and it's kind of frightening.
Very fucking intimidating.
Yeah, she's
very scary.
Yeah, she's an intense dog. She's luckily, knock on wood, never like attacked anybody. She just gets right up on them and barks like right in their face.
Yes.
And so I mean, luckily she's never done that. So whenever like we have new people come over, we have to just hold her and kind of just like force her to lay down and let the person get in. And then usually after like a minute or two, I'll like, kind of let her up and I hold on to her so she can sniff them. And usually once she gets a minute or two to check somebody out, then she just will finally calm down and just be like, oh, okay, like it's fine. But she's just always been like that. I remember even when she was like 4 or 5 months old, she just the moment anybody came over, she would just start going off. And she's always been that way with other dogs too. Like she just isn't very friendly with other dogs. Like she's never attacked one, but she just runs up on them, like gets right up in their face and just barks at them.
Yeah.
And I mean, she's never bit them, never attacked anybody, but it's just like I don't know what it is with her. It's very weird. And I've looked at all these different training methods, and we actually took her to like PetSmart had puppy classes that we took her to. We used to take her to the dog park, but she just I don't know. She's just not a multi-dog kind of person. Like she just needs us really, and which I actually read that German Shepherds. They're a breed of dog that don't need the interaction of other dogs. All they need is the people that they're loyal to. They're so dependent on people that as long as they're around whoever they're loyal to, they're totally happy. Like some dogs, they like the socialism of other dogs and going to the dog park and playing with them. But they said the German Shepherds, like some of them will do it if they were raised in dog parks and they enjoy doing that. But some of them just don't have any interest in it. They only care about the people that they care about, and that's it. So just surmise that she's just that kind of dog. She just doesn't really get along with other dogs. So when we take her out for walks, if we see another dog coming, we just pull her off to the side and make her sit there. And once they walk by, then we keep going. It's just kind of an ever training process with her. Yeah, I mean, other than that, she's awesome. She's got her little quirks, but
your dog is purebred, right?
Yep.
So that probably explains some of those kind of less desirable traits, because a lot of those genetic traits they pass on from time to time throughout the generations, and if it just happens to be that's it's the kind of less social dog, then that's just going to continue on, because there isn't any diversity, so you can't breed that out of them, whereas you're going to have other German Shepherds that don't have that issue.
Yeah, there's actually some in our neighborhood. There's a guy who has like an older male German Shepherd. He's incredibly friendly. I'm like envious. I'm like, I wish that Dizzy was more friendly like he is. Like he'll just, he doesn't like wag his tail and run up to people, but he'll like sniff them and just will keep going. Doesn't really bother him.
Have you tried talking to that guy about any of his like training for his dog?
I talked to him for just a quick second one day, and he said that like a lot of people that I've talked to with German Shepherds say that they're just so rambunctious for the good first like 4 to 5 years. They're just very high energetic, crazy, and then they just kind of hit this point of maturity where they mellow out. And he said that his dog, like, it would be on and off as it was growing up, and then he said that eventually it just kind of eased off and it's just more mellow now. It doesn't it's not freaked out by all these things. Like shepherds just go through this really big fear stage where whatever they don't recognize, they're just afraid of it, and so they bark at it to kind of ward it off and keep it away. And I think that's what she does, is she's just kind of at this stage where she gets out of the house a few times a day, but we don't take her to like social gatherings with all these people and other animals, so she doesn't get a lot of like the heavy social interactions. And so I think that when she's just around things she doesn't know, she just gets defensive because she's unsure of it.
Sure. Yeah, I think dogs are they're a bit difficult to figure out sometimes, and I think socialization is hugely important, and you have to socialize dogs in as much as you can, with as much as you can. Especially with like kids, if you have kids or you want them to be around a bunch of different people. But if you keep them in your house and they're just with you, then they just need to be just with you. You can't pretend like all of a sudden they can just go, be perfectly, nice around everybody if that's not something they've learned how to do or that they're used to, or especially if you know that they have, they're aggressive or whatever. I don't know. I mean, when I got my dog, I took it to dog parks since it was a puppy every week, pretty much, at least a couple times a month, all the time to dog parks. It's a small dog, but the more dogs that it's around, the more that the natural dominance behavior starts to educate them as to how you deal with other dogs. So you have like some dogs are very dominant, some dogs are submissive, and so your dog has to learn where its place is with other dogs. And so, my dog was very submissive, very small, so big dogs would come up to it. It would just go onto its back and just wait for the other dog to smell it, and then they would be buddies after that. And so big dogs, I think, have a lot more different. They end up learning differently than smaller dogs because they have so much more power. They can, overpower a lot of things. And your dog is specifically designed to ward off anything that might be a danger or a threat to the person it's with or to the sheep herd that it's protecting. That's what those dogs were bred for, was for protection from anything, including wolves, including cougars, including those are probably the big ones. So it makes sense that's going to be a more difficult dog to take in. And I think people who take in Rottweilers, Pit Bulls, and German Shepherds have to be aware of the nature of that dog's breed. German Shepherds are even less about aggression than like Pit Bulls, which were designed specifically to either kill each other or to take on animals. And then Rottweilers were also, I think that's another German dog, designed specifically for protection for, they're bigger dogs, they're fucking scary, and they have very strong jaws and big-ass teeth, and so they can... They can do a good job of protecting people, especially in a time when, prior to guns, people just had swords and
dogs.
Swords and dogs.
Yeah.
Dogs are hugely powerful weapons. In any video game, I want to have a dog killing things for me. It's very nice.
That was part of the reason why we got her. Actually, was that protection factor? Because I said, we researched it and we knew. And there were a lot of nights when I was working at a movie theater at the time, so my wife would be home by herself, and we didn't live in the best neighborhood at the time. And so she just felt uncomfortable being home by herself later in the evening, and so that was part of the reason why we got her too. And I don't ever fucking worry about anybody breaking my house now.
That
They're
dog
gonna
is
have
scary
a
as
nasty surprise when they come in. It's unfortunate because she's such a sweetheart that it makes me sad that she's so scary to people, like to strangers. Which I get it. Like if you don't know the dog and it's barking at you, you're just like, "Ugh, like get away." It's a little heartbreaking. You're like, "Oh, she's really is a sweetheart. He's got to give her a minute,"
Well, it's kind of like having a big dumb oaf, who's very scary around. That it's not necessarily trying to be mean. It's trying to protect you. It's just trying to tell you, hey, these things are here. These things are here. These things are here. These things are here. What are you doing? And then you have to step in and be like, this is how we're going to treat these things. We're going to treat these things like they're fucking people and that we can't eat at this point or kill. So it's very important to be the dominant, because it's looking to you if you're the alpha dog or whatever, because that's how they typically address hierarchies and deal with packs, because they're pack animals, blah blah blah.
Yeah, I did do a lot of research on pack animals because she's a very heavy dominant German Shepherd. A lot of dogs
it's
are. It's
going to try to dominate everything in its path until it finds something that dominates it, and then that becomes its leader. That's how most dogs are. I think all dogs are technically.
I think some are just more so than others.
Some are just a little bit harder. Yeah, a lot of that got bred out, with them being around humans so much. But that's a particularly important role that you have to play if you have an aggressive dog. Is you have to display the dominance and interact with the world in a way that tells it that you're the one interacting. You're the one who makes the plays. You decide what it does and doesn't do. That's why you have to have German Shepherds that are well trained, so they're waiting for your decision making. That way you are the one who is, saying, stay or go or attack or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas, I'm sure they were just left on their own originally to fend off bad guys and protect the family and protect the farm or protect the group, and then they just kind of did what they wanted and they lived with families and things, or groups of people. But anyway, the German Shepherds are really very very useful dogs. The whole interbreeding and purebred stuff I'm not a fan of. I don't think there's any reason to breed dogs for looks. I mean, there's reason to breed dogs for size, and there's
Yeah.
reasons to breed dogs for work capabilities. But I think you have to build into that if you're going to do that kind of selective breeding. You have to build into that practical, things like friendliness, like genetic. Immunities, like what is it called, like healthiness.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of interbreeding leads to lacks of terrible health issues, like German Shepherds have hip dysplasia is the
Big
one I read on.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's horrible for the dog. The dog doesn't, it grows up, it turns like 10 or whatever, it can't move because of
Her
the fucking
brother,
hips.
one of her brothers, actually already has it.
Yeah,
like
it's been a year
He's
or
a bigger,
3 years or whatever.
He's a bigger guy, and I heard that he doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, he can move around. It's just he doesn't.
Yeah. And that's the opposite of what you're going for with a dog. Is you don't want it to be unhealthy, you don't want it to be unhappy. As far as dogs can be happy and all that, you don't want it to be in pain. And I think that it's very inhumane to breed dogs knowing that they're going to end up with health problems.
Yeah.
Like you could easily breed a German Shepherd with this dog, have a very protective. Like there are other dogs like I think it's the Newfoundland. And the Beethoven dog, what is that?
Saint Bernard?
Saint Bernards. They're way protective, but they're like perfect with kids. Like they literally love, as long as they're trained correctly or around a healthy family or whatever. Like they're just perfect with kids, whereas a lot of dogs are not good with kids off the bat, and you have to really work on that with socialization and training. So you just have to really know what's going into it, and breeders are fucking pretentious assholes who are like pretending to be gods, creating life, in a certain package
For money. Don't forget.
for money. Oh, of course, for money and prestige, for the fame of being that dog breeder. And now you can get the money because your dog was the one that won, and now it's going to breed with other dogs. And I think it's just fucking, it's like evil science. It's like it's scientific, but it doesn't lead to very good outcomes necessarily. Whereas, I don't care if the dog looks a certain way. I want it to have certain features.
Yeah,
and I want those to also include my ability to get along with it and its ability to enter into my life without ruining my life. You know what I mean? Like it'd be easy to just have, all these, different sized dogs that were much more healthy. Like mutts tend to be much more healthy, but they look like shit sometimes, like my dog Wowzer, he was, essentially, schnauzers are dark and black usually, like black and white, and then you have Westies are pure white when they're purebred, and so he's essentially just white and black, but he looks black because black is dominant, and so it covers up the white for the most part. But he doesn't look; he just looks like a scraggly fucking ball of fluffy black and white mess, but super healthy and really well behaved and all that for the most part. He was he used to get stressed out from he had when we would leave, whatever that called,
Separation
anxiety.
Yeah, we had to deal with
really
that
bad. I think
too.
a lot of dogs have that because they're pack animals. No, packs never are by themselves for long period, like 8 hours. Maybe they would walk apart from each other, to go hunt or to go scout or to find areas or whatever. But they would always know where the other one is and how to get to them. So it's probably freaky for a dog to not have its family around, its pack.
Yeah, we had to leave her. We had like one of those Kong toys that we had to put like peanut butter and snacks in.
Yeah.
And we give it to her before she left, just something to keep her busy for a little while to like ease the transition of being alone.
Yeah.
But she pretty much now she like knows when we get up early in the morning and run, and then I come back and we get up and get ready for work. Like she knows what's going on. So usually at that point she's gotten her exercise for the morning, so she'll just camp out on the couch and just like watches us leave. And
oh yeah, exercise is huge for dogs because their natural behavioral tendencies is to hunt in the morning for their morning food, right, which would be a lot of exercise, and then hang out during the day when it's hot and not do a lot of exercise. But if you have a dog cooped up and it doesn't do any exercise, it just has way too much energy.
Yeah,
they're designed to they're used to doing tons of energy. They use their energy, they rest, they use a ton of energy, they rest. That's how hunting is for dogs. And so you have to get them out and about. You have to get them running and doing. I mean, people have treadmills just for dogs so that their dog in their apartment can do exercises. And a dog will use a treadmill. I tried it with my dog. It worked like the first time. because it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
They just, you put the little leash around the thing. You don't tie it or whatever. Put it around the treadmill top part where you put the handle, and then you just turn it on pretty slow, and they just walk. I remember I did like an hour on a elliptical machine, and Wowzer was on the treadmill right next to me. And I remember somebody came in. I was in an apartment complex in the gym, and these people came in, or they were going to come in. They were like looking in, and then they're just like left. Yeah, I think they thought that was weird, or they just didn't want to deal with other people. But yeah, exercise is huge. And then I wanted to talk about training just real quick. We're almost at an hour, and I don't want to go too long, but so what kind of training did you involved? So what I read was, and I shared the link with you, was there's essentially two types of training.
Yeah.
And then there's the in-between, right? So there's essentially dominance alpha dog training, which is where you use a lot of punishment, a lot of physical domination, and it's essentially the punishment negative situation. And then not necessarily bad, but, it could get overboard, especially with hitting and yelling.
Yeah.
Not good for dogs, because then they don't respect you. They kind of fear you, and they don't want to be around you, and they're not going to protect you either. And then you have the all positive reinforcement, which I think is slower, probably harder for people who aren't used to that style of training. But I think if I were to have another dog, I would try that. I would try the all positive reinforcement style and see how much I could handle it, like mentally, because it's, with Wowzer, I used balance, mostly positive reinforcement, almost always just giving treats, giving it attention when it does something good, because dogs really just want attention. That's like their biggest thing. It's just, if you ignore them, they're like sad or whatever. They don't think they're doing a good job. And then sometimes, like, I was horrible sometimes. I even like got mad at it and like hit it a couple times. Like I was hitting, like I was a terrible parent, who hit their kid when the kid doesn't know what they did wrong. Like, I've done that, and it's shocking and it's bad, and it kind of taught me to be more patient and all that. So anyway, what do you think about training?
With Dizzy, we used a pretty solid balance of the two. The first thing that we had to do, which is what a lot of things that I read recommended, is that you had to establish your dominance first, especially with German Shepherds. They're just naturally a dominant breed, and if you don't get on top of it right away, they'll just take advantage of you. And so that was where we started our training. But there can only be one alpha, so my wife butts heads with her all the time because she recognizes me, the alpha. My wife will give her a command. She literally looks to me immediately afterwards. Like, she's just like, do I have to listen to this bitch, or what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I started with dominance training, which just consisted mostly of you go through the door first. So I make her sit, and I'm like, you wait. And then I go through the door, and then I'll turn around and I'll motion for her to come through. Eye contact, if they make eye contact with you, you literally have to lock eyes with them until they look away. Because they look at it as a sign of weakness if you look away first. It was just like all these little quirks like that. I'm just like, things you wouldn't even think to do. So I had to like train myself to be dominant to her. Because I'm not that kind of person. I don't force myself on people, and I don't try to dominate people. I'm just pretty easygoing. But with her, I was like, she's not a person; she's a dog. And if I don't establish myself as above her, then she's not going to listen to me. And as far like when she gets out of line, I've like you, I've like lost my temper with her when she's just way out of line, and I've smacked her on the butt because she's just getting out of control. But most of the time, if she's getting out of line, I just grab her by the like the nape of her neck and just force her down, like dogs do when they're dominating. They usually go for the throat, I think, and just like kind of pin. Yeah, and so I'll just grab her by the back of her neck, and I just force her to the ground. And then she for the longest time would fight us and just try to get up. But now the moment I do it, she just cowers right down and doesn't move until I let up. So I use that as kind of like a punishment. Like if she wasn't listening or barking a lot, and I was telling her to be quiet, and she would just wouldn't stop, then I'll just pin her down until she calms down. So we started with dominance, and then whenever we're trying to teach her new things, like tricks, like sit and all that. I mean, it's straight positive reinforcement. We bring a bunch of treats with us when we take her on walks, and if she can go off to the side and sit down and let like strangers walk by or a dog go by, and if she doesn't make a sound, then she gets a treat. If she does make a sound, then I show her the treat and then I put it in my pocket, like, sorry, like, you messed up, now you don't get it, and then we'll keep walking. And then usually like a little bit later I'll make her stop and sit down again, and try it again. Which, like I said, that as far as like strangers and other dogs, I think that's just going to be something that I'm always working with her on. And it's just going to be like that ever battle, like this never ending struggle kind of a thing. But, I mean, she listens to me pretty much spot on. I don't really have trouble with her. Like when we're walking, she doesn't pull that hard. I'll tell her to heel and she'll back it up. I mean, if she gets excited, she'll start pulling and stuff. But, my wife is honestly the one who probably has the biggest struggle with her, and it's just because it's a pack mentality for her. Mm-hmm. She recognizes me, the alpha, and my wife is just like her competition, I guess. So I mean, she listens to Vanessa most of the time, but there are just times where she's just out of control and won't listen to Vanessa at all, which infuriates her, obviously, because she just wants the dog to settle down or listen to her or whatever. And I've also spent a lot more time with her, I think, personally. Like, we exercise, we go running every morning, we go on walks all the time, and Vanessa usually goes on walks with us, but sometimes she just doesn't feel like doing it, so I'll take her. So I've just spent more time with her overall, I think, between the two of us. But I mean, that's what I use. It was mostly like establishing dominance, and then as far as learning beyond that, I just try to use positive reinforcement. Because as a person myself, I feel like I respect things and learn more if I have positive reinforcement myself. If you're just going to be a dick to me and then kick me some more while I'm down, like, why would I want to listen to you? You're just a shitty person. And so that's how I try to look at it with her.
Yeah.
But I mean, when I go get a dog again, I think that I would probably try to use more positive reinforcement than like negative things. I learned so much just raising her myself. I feel like as sad as it sounds, like next time around, I feel like I'm going to do such a better job than I did this time, which sucks because I feel like in a way that I let her down. Like, I was learning and I fucked up, and there's things that I could have done to make her a better dog. Such as like socialization. I should have taken her to dog parks like once or twice a week. And I mean, we would go like once every couple weeks or whenever we would get free time, but it was never consistent. And I think that kind of led her to not be so friendly with other dogs and strangers because she wasn't around them as much. And I mean, that's like the biggest thing. If I had a time machine, I would go back and be like, we're taking her once to twice a week, and then I feel like she would just be a lot better as far as that goes. But I mean,
I think you still could do that. I think you could socialize her and you could take her to dog parks. It would just be much harder now. You would have to go with a leash. You'd have to keep it on the leash, get like a really long leash, and then you would have to just positively reinforce any situation that it's in. Mostly do things just you two. Right. Even at the dog park, you would just you would dictate how it deals with other dogs. And then eventually you could work up to letting it off the leash.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've seen people at the dog park with big dogs who who are typically young, like bigger dogs. And they have them on the leash because they want to be in control, which is totally understandable because they don't want it to hurt another dog or provoke another dog to hurt it. And then you just have to slowly do that, and that's a lot of work, a lot of time spent at the dog park and doing all that stuff. And then you could that will also hopefully help it with people too, because it would be around people all the time. And I don't think your dog's ever gonna just be like happy to see other things. It's just gonna want to be with you. It's not bad. You know how your dog is. Just don't pretend like it's not like that, and you'll be fine. But if you want, you can change its behavior. Dogs are just like humans. They adapt to their environment. It takes time, and the more you do it, the better. And then, as far as your wife goes, that's tough. There's no getting around the whole alpha dog thing.
Researched it and just to see if there was anything that she can. And it's just one of those things.
You could have her do similar things, like you go through the door, your wife goes through the door, and then it goes through the door.
Yeah,
right.
We do
you
that
turn
now.
it into you 1. Vanessa 2, it's 3/4/5. You know what I mean? Like any whatever level you want it to be at. And so you eat, Vanessa eats, it eats. You know what I mean? You wait until you guys are done eating, and then it eats. Like you would just have to do that a lot.
Yeah.
And then eventually, it's going to get older. It's going to get more. It's not going to be as rambunctious.
She's slowly geting there. I mean, she's like almost
it takes
3.
a lot of time. I
Yeah.
mean, like 5 years is like middle age for a dog, or 7 years, I guess, depending on the dog. And most purebred dogs don't live as long as other dogs.
Yeah, I think
breed.
that the average for a shepherd is like 10, 12 years tops.
Yeah,
so.
some dogs get up to 15, 20, but that's pretty rare. Depending on the breed.
Actually, her mother is only like 6 or 7 and already has like tumors and stuff.
Yeah,
and so
totally.
it's just. I was telling Vanessa, I was like, you just be prepared for that. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
you're not gonna have
she's
that thing that
purebred. If her mother is already having these
Yeah.
health problems, there's a good chance that and her brother has hip dysplasia
Yeah.
already. I mean, we've been very lucky with her so far. She hasn't had any serious health concerns or anything.
Yeah.
But I kind of just you're so attached to it and you love it to death and you put all this time into it. But I don't know. I always kind of have like a little bit of distance from her because I just know that one day, not really crazy far in the future, it's just kind of
Hence,
over.
It's
so.
not a human.
Yeah.
That's the thing is like, I mean, as much as we love dogs and we love our animals and pets and things, it's not the same. Like, I don't see my dog anymore. I still love it and it still makes me want to cry. And I could go see it and I will and fine. But it's not the same. You couldn't just leave your child.
Yeah,
you can't just
yeah.
send your child. I mean, you can take them to adoption agencies, but not when they're 10. You could. I don't know, but it's not the same thing. And but I think that as far as training and techniques like that go, I think trying to be ultra positive about it just makes it that much easier. I think it's really a lot easier. You just don't. I don't know the techniques. It's easier in the long run. It's easier in the short term to be violent toward your dog because it seems to work, but it doesn't really. I don't think it really works as well because I think it ultimately it's not. It's the connection doesn't get made as quickly. Like the dog really just wants to do what you want and be there for you. And so when you're confusing because you're being negative about something, I think it's hard for it to figure out as quickly. Whereas eventually, you just only positively reinforce good behaviors and give it attention when it's good, that's helpful. But it's not as easy as black and white, I don't think, all the time.
Yeah, you have to have a lot of
Depending on the
patience
breed,
and stuff.
Patience.
And
knowledge. I mean, you have to look it up. Like, I watched Cesar Millan, and so that's kind of how I took my dog training was the dominance kind of thing, and I think it worked pretty well. And Cesar Millan's fucking does a good job with dogs.
Yeah.
And then there's this other this lady, something Stillwell or something.
Yeah, I remember.
She
I know
does
you're talking about.
all positive reinforcement, and then like gesturing and clicks and all sorts of different cues and
Pavlov
things.
dog
And that's how
training.
she does it. She does no negative reinforcement stuff. And I wish that I had known more about both techniques and utilized knowing those little clicks. You click a clicker when you want them to do something instead of giving them treats all the time, and then you don't give them attention when they're doing something bad. You wait for them to calm down on their own and go sit in the spot you want, and then you give it attention, and then you give it food, and then you open the door or whatever for somebody coming in. I think that just takes way more patience, and that's the thing you don't have when you're fucking 20 and you just have your first dog. So it's definitely better to fuck up with a dog
than a person.
It's hard to say that out loud, but
yeah,
I think it's better to
true.
try.
I
It's
mean-
better to learn about how to train a dog than to just do, just to have a kid and not try. Not that people are making that decision. They're not like, man, I wonder if I should have a dog or a kid. Well, we'll just have a kid. Fuck it. But it's a good learning experience for sure. And dogs are great fucking companions. They will love you more than any cat will ever fucking give a shit about you. Ever. It's just the truth.
Actually,
you can pretend like your cat will do anything for you, and there are some cats out there that just want to be pet like crazy, but the dog literally lives and dies by your life. It loves you more than anything ever. So it's really they're special creatures.
no, that's
for sure.
they're incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
I went from not really being a dog person to now I will probably just always have a dog in my life.
They're
I
so
can't
nice.
imagine not having one now.
I think there are even statistics that due to the fact that people with dogs walk more and because of the psychological effects that people with dogs live longer. just like statistically.
Oh yeah, like coming home from
Yeah.
work is like one of my favorite. Like opening the door, she just is so
So
overwhelmingly
happy. Yeah.
excited. Like,
Yeah.
oh my god, you guys are amazing.
Yeah.
You're home. My life's awesome. Like,
Yeah, totally.
You just feel good coming home to
that's-
something that's so excited
And
to
that's
see you.
going to happen when it's 7. You
Yeah.
know, when it's older and dying, it's still going to be like, you guys rock. I can't move, but this is awesome right now.
Yeah.
You know, even though it's kind of sad. But anyway. Cool. Well, that was a good podcast. I wanted to talk about a little bit more of the kind of negative side of interbreeding and or not interbreeding, because that's just what breeding is. It's in between.
You got to enter to do it.
Yeah, you got to enter. But like eugenics, I wanted to talk about that because like it's kind of like eugenics in that it's controlling populations through sexual behaviors. And then I wanted to talk about like the kind of how all of that works and how, I don't know, we've kind of touched on it a little bit about the negative effects of inbreeding.
Yeah.
So anyway, but that was fun.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well,
Makes
good
me want to
episode.
go get a dog like right now.
I know.
I would. I
just
could
makes me wanna
handle
go
it.
home and just love her some more and do
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. I want to. I need to get myself a little dog, but I need to not work crazy hours. And
Yeah.
have tons of things I'm
That's
doing.
like the
and I'm
hardest
never
part
home.
is just having the time.
If I could have the dog with me, like if people didn't mind you bringing your dog around
Mhm.
town